Miles ran toward the body lying on the ground. The old man was on his side, his head bleeding and his eyes half open, as if silently begging for help. People hurried past, avoiding him, as if he were invisible. "Hey, sir, wake up," Miles said, kneeling beside him. He took off his own torn coat and covered the man, even though he was trembling from the cold. There, in the middle of the dirty street, the boy who had no one decided to save a stranger. He didn't know, but that old man was a retired judge, and that gesture on that night would change everything, for both of them. If this story touched you in any way, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. There's a lot of powerful stuff coming, and you won't want to miss it. He was lying there alone in the middle of the wet sidewalk, his face pressed against the cold concrete, his hand open, powerless, trembling. People walked by on both sides, dodging him as if he were part of the ground. No one stopped, but Miles did. He was 12 years old, skinny, wearing dirty clothes. He slept in alleys, ate whatever he found, and trusted almost no one. But there, in that moment, he didn't think twice. He saw the collapsed old man, struggling to breathe, and ran to him. The man's eyes were half closed and a thin line of blood ran down his forehead. "Hey, sir, can you hear me?" Miles murmured, crouching beside him. Nothing. No sound. No movement. Miles took off his ragged coat and placed it over the man's chest. It was cold. The wind sliced through Chicago's streets, and even without protection, the boy stayed there, trying to shield that fragile body with the little he had. He shouted for help. Some people looked, but kept walking. A woman carrying grocery bags crossed to the other side of the street. A man in a suit pretended not to hear. Miles kept trying. It was a woman in a burgundy coat who finally stopped. She approached cautiously, looked at the man on the ground, then at the boy, and pulled out her phone. "I've called emergency," she said, as if trying to keep her distance from both of them. When the ambulance arrived, Miles slowly stepped away. The paramedics surrounded the man and began examining him. One of them looked at Miles. "Are you family?" The boy shook his head. He wasn't anyone's family. He had no one. He watched as they placed the man on a stretcher and took him away. The old man seemed too light to be real, like he could vanish at any moment. Miles stayed until the ambulance turned the corner and disappeared. Then he returned to his spot between two buildings on 47th Street, a narrow, damp alley that smelled of mold and urine. There, on top of a piece of cardboard, he kept his bag with 2 old apples and a pack of chips. He sat down and kept thinking about the old man. He didn't know his name, nor why he was on the street. But there was something in his face, a silent pain, like the man was tired of living. That stirred something in Miles he couldn't explain. The next day, Miles went to the hospital. He didn't go in. He stayed across the street, watching the entrance, waiting for a sign. After an hour, just as he was about to leave, he saw a nurse step out to smoke. The badge on her coat said, "Margot." He approached her carefully. "The old guy from last night? The one on the sidewalk. Is he alive?" She narrowed her eyes, inspecting the boy. Dirty face, disheveled hair, stained clothes. She was used to that type. "Why?" I'm the one who called for help." She took a slow drag from her cigarette. "He's in observation. No one knows his name. He's alive, but weak. Very weak. Lucky someone covered him." Miles just nodded. He didn't say anything else and walked away. 4 days later, Margot found him. Miles was stacking cans in a broken cart near the station. She showed up suddenly, wearing the same white coat, an envelope in her hand. "I found you," she said. Miles stopped. He thought about running, but there was something different in her tone. "His name is Walter Green, retired judge." Miles blinked, confused. "Judge?" He woke up. "Remembers you. Said he wants to see you." She held out a card with a handwritten address. A house in Hyde Park, an old and quiet neighborhood. Miles didn't take the card right away. He just stared. Judge. The word made his stomach turn. His father had been arrested by a judge. Never came back. The following afternoon he went. He walked through tree-lined streets, dry leaves covering the sidewalks. The blue house with tall windows and peeling paint looked frozen in time. He rang the bell. A chime echoed inside. The door opened, and there was the old man, clean, with his face bandaged and a steady gaze. It was Walter Green. "You're the boy." Miles just nodded. "Come in." The boy hesitated, but he stepped inside. The house smelled of old wood, soup, and dusty books. There were paintings on the walls, certificates, diplomas, photos with public figures. Walter walked slowly, with careful steps. "I should have died on that ground," he said, sitting in a dark armchair. "But you saved me." "Why?" Miles shrugged. "I was there. That's all." Walter stared at him for a few long seconds. "Do you have a place to sleep?" "I do," Miles lied, averting his eyes. Walter knew it was a lie. "If you want, you can stay here for a few days, just until you find something." Miles didn't reply. He stood still, looking around. It was the first house with solid walls and a trustworthy roof he'd entered in a long time. There are rules: no stealing, no trouble, no noise after 10. The boy nodded. "Go wash your hands." In the bathroom, Miles looked at himself in the mirror. Thin face, sunken eyes, a shirt stained beyond cleaning. But now there was a roof, a closed door, and strange as it felt, a chance. That night he slept on a real mattress, with a blanket. The ticking of the clock in the living room kept him awake at first, but the silence there was different. Not the silence of fear, another kind. A silence that hurt softly but warmed him inside. Walter said nothing more that day. He just served a bowl of soup and watched from a distance, like analyzing a defendant without a record. Miles knew it wouldn't be easy. The old judge still carried deep scars, and so did he. In that house, two distant worlds were about to collide, and what would come next, no one was prepared for. Walter woke up early. The morning light barely touched the living room rug, and he was already sitting in the armchair with a cup of coffee and a folded newspaper on his lap. Miles, still lying on the couch, pretended to sleep. The makeshift mattress was more comfortable than anything he'd ever had, but the silence of the house made him restless. It was too different from the streets. "You can get up. Coffee's on the table," Walter said without looking at him. Miles sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes. The smell of coffee filled the air, mixed with burnt toast. The kitchen was simple but tidy. No clutter, no mess. Everything in its place. He sat at the table without saying a word, grabbed a mug and poured some. Walter watched him over his glasses. "What's your last name?" "Just Miles." "Got any ID?" "No." "Family?" "Not anymore." Walter didn't press further. He went back to his paper. The following days followed the same routine. Walter read, wrote in a brown notebook, tended to plants in the backyard. Miles cleaned what he could, washed the dishes, took out the trash. They didn't talk much. It was as if they lived on opposite sides of the same house. Even the TV's voice sounded awkward. It was on the fourth day that everything changed. Miles returned from the street with an old backpack. He had gone to the station to retrieve some things he'd hidden in a hole in the wall. Torn photos, a leather string with a button tied to it, and a blue-covered notebook. When he entered the house, Walter was on the phone, his voice firm. "Yes, I understand, but that's not the point. He's not just another one, he's different." Miles stopped in the doorway listening. Walter saw him and ended the call. It was Margot, the nurse. Miles nodded. He sat on the couch, holding the notebook. "What are you hiding there?" Miles clutched the notebook. "Nothing." Walter didn't push. That night, the judge invited the boy to dine in the living room. It was a new gesture. There were set utensils, napkins, even an open bottle of wine, though he didn't drink. Miles found it all strange. The food was simple: rice, roast beef, and steamed vegetables. But there was something ceremonial about it, as if Walter were trying to reclaim a piece of himself. "Why do you live on the streets, Miles?" The boy chewed slowly, avoiding his gaze. "My father was arrested. After that, I lost everything. My mom got sick, disappeared. I ended up there." Walter set his fork down. The silence thickened. "What was your father's name?" "Tyler Rowan." The judge froze. Miles didn't notice. "He was wrongly convicted," said the boy. No one heard his side. A judge decided everything in 5 minutes, didn't give him a single chance. Walter picked up the wine glass, took a sip, and said nothing. After that dinner, the tension returned. Walter became quieter. So did Miles. It was Margot who showed up on Saturday, unannounced. She arrived with a wrapped cake and a smile no one believed was purely casual. "Hope I'm not interrupting," she said, walking in without hesitation. Walter didn't respond. Miles greeted her with a shy smile. "Came to see how you're doing, and bring something." Margot handed Walter a folder with papers. The boy's case is open. Petty thefts. Nothing serious, but he's had 3 incidents. If he's caught again, he'll go to juvenile detention, and you, Walter, are now his legal guardian, even if you don't want the title. I didn't sign up for this, the judge muttered. You did. With every bowl of soup, every made-up bed, every house rule, she shot back. Miles listened in silence. The word detention echoed loudly. He knew boys who never came back from there. I didn't steal to be bad, he said suddenly. I just wanted to eat. Margot turned to him. I know, dear, but the system doesn't care about that. Walter stayed silent for a long while. Then he took the documents and placed them on the shelf. He said nothing else that day. On Monday, something happened. The neighbor's dog, an old golden retriever named Charlie, got stuck under the porch. He whimpered, cried. The owner wasn't home. Miles heard and ran over. Crawled under the boards, cut his arm, but managed to pull the dog out. The dog licked him all over, dirtying his shirt. Walter saw it all through the window. When the neighbor returned and heard what happened, he rang the Blue House's bell. The kid saved me an expensive trip to the vet. I want to thank him. Walter listened, nodded in acknowledgement, and shut the door without saying much. But that night, he served 2 slices of apple pie instead of 1. The ice was starting to melt. Days later, Walter entered the guest room, where Miles slept, with a package of used clothes. They were my son's, was all he said. Miles picked up a shirt. It was too big, but clean. Where is he? He asked, almost unintentionally. Walter didn't answer. He simply left the room. The next morning, Miles woke up earlier and went to the backyard. Found Walter sitting in the rocking chair, looking at the sky. He died 9 years ago, said the judge, not turning his face. Car accident. The other driver's fault. Never stopped to help. Miles sat nearby, said nothing. The judge continued. I never learned to forgive or move on. I became bitter, cold. I hid myself here. Silence. You found me on the ground, he said, and somehow made me get back up. Walter's voice broke at the end. Miles felt a tightness in his chest. For the first time, he saw the old man falter. But that truce didn't last long. On Friday, Walter received a letter. Someone had reported him. The letter, sent by an old court acquaintance, mentioned harboring a delinquent minor and risk to the neighborhood. Walter read it aloud at the table. Miles stood trembling. I didn't do anything, Mr. Walter. I know that, the judge replied, eyes fixed on the paper. But something in him had changed. Doubt? Fear? I can leave if you want, Miles said. I don't want to cause you trouble. Walter took a deep breath, ran his hand over his face, and looked at the boy. You're not going anywhere. But outside the house, someone was watching from the sidewalk. And what was coming would be just the beginning of an even deeper fall. Walter didn't mention the report again in the days that followed, but the change was there, subtle, silent, like a crack growing from within. He spent more time alone in the study, reviewing documents, making calls to people Miles didn't know. When the boy asked anything, he only replied with short nods or clipped phrases. The Blue House grew colder. Miles pretended not to notice. He washed dishes, swept the hallway, tended the plants in the yard. He even fixed one of the dining chairs with tape and a piece of wood he found in the street. He hoped the judge would notice, say something, but he didn't. That Friday, when Walter returned from the market, he found the door ajar. Miles was on the living room floor, holding one of the framed pictures from the shelf. It wasn't broken. He was just cleaning the glass with a rag. Don't touch what isn't yours, Walter said firmly. Miles dropped the cloth, startled. I just wanted to help. Helping isn't invading. Go to your room. The boy left in silence, swallowing the lump in his throat. Walter was left alone. He looked at the frame on the floor, an old photo of him with a younger boy in front of a courthouse. His son, Nathan. That night, Walter dreamed of the accident. The phone ringing at 3 a.m, the voice of the police, the hospital, the body, the absence. He woke up sweating, heart racing, sat on the edge of the bed, hands over his face. He hadn't cried in years, but now his eyes were wet. The next day, Margot showed up again, this time without warning, without cake, without a smile. I got a call. The neighbor formalized the report. They said the boy is a threat to neighborhood safety, that he's being hidden here. That's ridiculous, Walter said, irritated. This is Chicago, Walter. It doesn't have to be true, it just has to look true. Miles heard part of the conversation. He didn't want to hear more. He went back to his room, packed his things into a bag, and waited for nightfall. He left through the back door, quietly. The street was cold, damp like the day he'd found Walter. He walked to the train station and curled up near the inactive machines. He had nowhere to go. He only knew he couldn't stay. But Walter noticed. He entered the room and saw the empty bed, the open window. He left immediately. In his pajamas, he got in the car and drove through the nearby streets. He stopped at every alley, every spot he'd seen Miles before. Nothing. The city was too big for an old man and his regret. The next day, Miles was in a youth shelter, detained by the police after being caught sleeping in a closed parking lot. A security guard had turned him in as a trespasser. The social worker looked at the records and saw the previous offenses: stolen granola bar, attempt to take someone else's backpack on the subway. Small things, but enough. Walter was called in. Seated at a wooden table, he faced the child welfare officer. "Are you really willing to take legal responsibility for this minor?" "I am." "Even with the record?" "Yes." "And you understand the legal consequences of any future incidents?" "I do." The woman sighed, filled out the paperwork. Walter signed with a trembling hand. Miles entered shortly after, eyes downcast. When he saw the judge sitting there, he thought it was a trap, but Walter simply held out a coat. "Let's go." The ride home was silent. When they arrived, Miles didn't go in. "I don't want to cause you trouble," he said. "You already have," Walter replied. "But not all trouble is bad." Miles looked at him confused. "You stirred things in me that I thought were dead. You annoyed me, challenged me, but you also reminded me of what I had forgotten." "What was that?" Walter looked him in the eye. "That being a judge was never just about applying rules. It was about listening. And I stopped listening a long time ago." They went inside. Miles went to his room. Walter remained in the living room in silence. The next day, Walter did something he hadn't done in years. He went to the courthouse, not as a judge, as a citizen. He contacted an old colleague, a retired defense attorney, and asked for advice. He showed Miles's record, the reports, the name of his father. "Tyler Rowan, I remember the case," the attorney said. "They got him based on a faulty ID. He never had a decent defense. I was the one who sentenced him," Walter confessed quietly. "Does that change anything?" "For me it does." Walter left the building with sunken eyes. The past was returning with weight. At home, he began digging. He pulled out old case files, searched the records. The dates matched. The conviction was rushed. The trial held in record time. Miles was right. His father might have been innocent. In the days that followed, Walter became obsessed. Reviewed notes, contacted old witnesses, called former prosecutors. Little by little, the details began to align. The truth was beginning to surface. Late one night, Miles entered the study. "What are you doing?" "Trying to fix a mistake." "My dad?" Walter nodded. "If I can prove there was a failure in the process, maybe we can get the sentence reviewed." Miles was silent. Then he stepped closer and grabbed a folder. "I'll help you." Father and son never got their chance. But in that study, night after night, a judge and a boy who just wanted to understand the world worked together. The Blue House came to life. Margot started visiting more often. She brought books, food, and advice. One day she arrived with a proposal: an alternative school, a program for teens living on the streets, a chance for education even outside the regular system. Miles hesitated. He'd never had a notebook with his name on it, a new backpack, roll call, but he accepted. He started attending in the afternoons, learned quickly, not just subjects but how to sit in a classroom, how to raise his hand before speaking, how to trust adults. Walter dropped him off and picked him up, waited in the car, reading. One day, at the school gate, Miles saw a boy being pushed by another. He almost hit his head. Miles intervened, broke up the fight, spoke firmly. No one got hurt, but the other boy ran, and when stopped by a teacher, blamed Miles. The following week, Miles was suspended. The phone rang in the Blue House. It was the school's principal. Walter listened to everything. "He acted to protect," he said firmly. "Even so, there are rules," the principal replied. Walter hung up with clenched fists. The next morning, he went to the school in person. "I want to see the security cameras." "Sir, we can't." "I'm Walter Green, Court of Appeals, Northern Division, 1992 to 2008. Show me the tapes." 30 minutes later, everything was cleared. Miles hadn't done anything wrong. Leaving the principal's office, Walter felt lighter, as if for the first time he were using his authority for something that truly mattered. But that night, the doorbell rang. Outside, 2 men in suits. "Mr. Walter Green?" "Yes." One of them showed ID. "Judicial Conduct Review Service. We need to talk about a requested review of past cases, including a specific one, Tyler Rowan, 2013. Walter froze. "May we come in?" Miles appeared in the hallway, hearing the voices. And there, standing on the stairs, he knew the judge's past, his father's past, and his own future were about to collide in a way none of them could have predicted. The room was silent, except for the sound of the 2 men's footsteps. Both wore dark suits, leather briefcases, and expressions trained not to reveal anything. Miles stood frozen in the hallway, his heart pounding in his throat. Walter asked him to return to his room, but the boy stayed. He needed to hear. "We're reopening investigations related to sentences issued between 2010 and 2015, one of the agents explained. "We've received reports of potential procedural misconduct and rulings involving defendants with inadequate defense. Your name came up in connection with 3 of those cases. One of them is Tyler Rowan's." Walter took a deep breath. His face, always composed, looked older now. Tyler's name echoed through the house like a ghost far too familiar. "That was my sentence," the judge said firmly. "Exactly. And there's suspicion that the decision was made based on weak evidence. The process was extremely expedited. There was no proper time for defense review." Walter nodded. He already knew all of that. It was what he was trying to fix. "And you're currently involved with the defendant's son, correct?" "I am," he replied, looking the men in the eye. Miles felt his legs go weak. "There's nothing illegal about your involvement, Mr. Green," the agent continued, "but we need you to accompany us to the courthouse for clarification. Serious implications are involved." "He didn't do anything wrong," Miles shouted without thinking. The men turned to him. Walter turned calmly. "It's all right, Miles. It's just a deposition." Walter grabbed his coat, looked at the boy with a brief nod, and left with the 2 men. The door closed slowly, like a period written with hesitation. Hours passed. Miles sat on the stairs, staring into space. Margot appeared in the late afternoon, as if she already knew. She sat beside him and hugged him. "They're going to try to drag his name, Miles. But you have to understand, Walter is facing his own past for you. What if they take him from me?" Margot remained silent. She knew she didn't have an answer. In court, Walter testified for 3 hours. He spoke honestly, explained how he received Tyler's case, how he followed procedures, but also how he failed to look beyond the police report. He said that, at the time, he was a grieving man, hardened, and that made him blind. He admitted he may have made a mistake. An uncomfortable silence filled the room. The agents took notes, recorded everything. There were no handcuffs, no shouting, but Walter left knowing that a shadow would follow him from then on. Back at the Blue House, he was greeted with a sudden hug. Miles ran to him, held him tightly as if afraid to let go. "I thought you weren't coming back." Walter gave a faint smile. "So did I." In the days that followed, the city seemed suspended. Miles returned to school. Walter kept his routine, but there was always the expectation of another visit, another letter, something more, until it came. A subpoena. Walter was to appear at a public hearing, not as a judge but as a former magistrate under ethical review. Tyler Rowan's case would be re-examined, based on new evidence. Walter knew what that meant. Exposure, headlines, criticism, a tarnished reputation. But he didn't hesitate. "This could clear your father's name," he told Miles. "Or at least tell the truth. And you? I've already had what I deserved. Now I just want to do what's right." The week of the hearing arrived. Miles asked to go with him. Walter refused. "This is between me and my past. You're my present." But Miles went anyway. He sat in the back of the courtroom, hidden among reporters and onlookers, heard every word, every argument, saw Walter stand up, place a hand over his heart and admit he was biased, that he let his grief cloud his judgment. "I'm not here to defend what I did," he said. I'm here to acknowledge that my omission cost a man his freedom, and that man's son has taught me more about justice than years on the bench." Miles blinked hard to hold back tears. The hearing's verdict was symbolic. Walter would not face criminal charges, but his name would be removed from the state's Judicial Honor Board, and Tyler Rowan's case would be sent to the Supreme Court of Review for new analysis. Outside, cameras surrounded the building. Walter walked out with his head held high. Miles ran to him and hugged him amid the flashes. It was the first time they allowed themselves to be photographed together. The following week, an envelope arrived at the Blue House. It was from the Supreme Court. Tyler's case would be officially reopened. New evidence would be reviewed. Walter's name appeared as the initiator of the process. He would gain nothing from it. No medal, no promotion. But Miles understood the value. That night, they sat together on the porch. Walter, holding a cup of tea. Miles with the blue notebook. "Remember when I asked why you let me stay?" Miles said. "I remember. Do you have an answer now?" Walter looked at the sky. "Because when you found me on that ground, I was already dead inside. But you pulled me back." The silence between them was full of things that didn't need to be said. The next day, Miles returned to school. He was called to the coordinator's office. Someone had taken interest in his story. A legal institute had offered a scholarship, full coverage, so he could finish high school, and later college if he wished. Miles stood still with the paper in his hands. Didn't know what to say. Is this real? Very. Someone believes in you, and now the system wants to see you go further. He ran home, paper crumpled but smile intact. "Walter, look at this." The judge took the document, read it, then looked at Miles. "Are you going to accept?" "If you'll be around." Walter smiled. "Always." But not everything was resolved. One afternoon, Margot called. The final ruling in Tyler's case would be announced in a week. Walter started walking more, slept little, wrote letters. In one of them, Miles saw his name in the first line. Tried to ask, but Walter only said, "It's just to make sure that if something happens, you'll be protected." Nothing's going to happen. But Walter coughed more, got tired easily. Age was catching up. Miles started taking care of him. Served tea, organized books, read aloud. Their roles reversed, naturally. One night, Walter left a folder on the desk. "If I'm not here when the ruling comes, read this first." "Don't say that." Walter held Miles's face with both hands. "You gave me more life than the courts ever did. And now I leave you everything I know, and everything I still hope you'll discover on your own." The next morning, Walter was still asleep, and he didn't wake up. Miles called Margot, called the neighbor, but there was nothing more to be done. The judge passed peacefully with a faint smile on his lips and an open book on his lap. The city felt colder that day. The funeral was simple, a few old friends, some teachers from school, Margot at Miles's side, holding his hand tightly. At the end of the ceremony, they handed Miles a sealed letter. Walter had written it before he left. It said, "You weren't my son by blood, but you were my son in soul. Thank you for teaching me how to love again. Now go. The world needs someone who looks beyond the criminal record. Someone like you." At the bottom of the letter, a business card. Chicago Law School, early admission. With a handwritten note, "I already paid the first tuition." Miles stood still for minutes, then closed the letter, looked at the cloudy sky and whispered, "I'll make it count. I promise." But what he didn't know yet was that the name Tyler Rowan would also be rewritten, and that would change much more than just the past. Summer came early in Chicago that year. The heat blanketed the city's rooftops like a heavy quilt, muffling even the most common sounds. Honking, children, barking dogs. But in the Blue House on 47th Street, the silence was different, thicker. Since Walter passed, Miles had avoided his room, not out of fear but respect. It felt like entering an old library, where everything demanded silence and care. The days passed slowly. School now felt like another world. Teachers asked about Walter. The counselor offered psychological support. Margot visited almost every day, but Miles said little, slept even less. At night, lying on the couch that had become his bed, he listened to the creaks of the house as if Walter were still there, walking with slow steps down the hallways. One afternoon, while going through old papers in the study, he found the folder. the one Walter had left on the desk before he died. Inside were documents, clippings, handwritten letters, and a full dossier. The Tyler Rowan case, reinvestigation and personal analysis. Miles flipped through it with trembling hands. There were Walter's red ink notes, questioning witnesses, refuting evidence, pointing out holes in the case. And at the end, a letter addressed to the Supreme Court of Review. In it, Walter declared, "Reviewing this sentence will not be an act of favor. It will be justice, even if late. I believe that had Tyler Rowan received a proper trial, he would be alive today, taking care of his son, a boy I found on the ground, but who taught me to stand back up." Miles stopped there, his chest tight as if the air in the room had disappeared. The following week, the envelope arrived, a golden seal from the Supreme Court. It took Miles minutes to break the seal. Inside, an official letter. Original sentence annulled due to procedural misconduct. Tyler Rowan's name cleared of all charges. Case closed. Record expunged. Miles stood still, then folded the paper carefully and placed it inside the blue notebook. He left the house without saying a word, walked to the park where he used to sleep before meeting Walter, sat on the same bench, looked around. Everything was the same. The crooked tree, the broken fountain, the old light pole, but he was no longer the same boy. 2 days later, Miles went to school with the letter in hand. He showed it to the counselor, who hugged him in silence. He asked to speak at the student assembly. "My name is Miles Rowan," he said to the packed auditorium. "My father was wrongfully convicted. For years, I was just another street kid, but someone believed in me. A man I saved from death saved me from life. Today, I'm here because of him, and because my father's name is finally clean." Applause didn't come immediately, but when it came, it was sincere, long, strong. That night, Miles returned home, stopped in front of the mirror, saw his reflection. Same messy hair, same deep eyes, but something was different. There was purpose. He opened Walter's closet. Hanging there between old suits was a navy blue blazer. Next to it, a smaller envelope with the name Miles, written in the judge's steady handwriting. He opened it. "This blazer accompanied me through over 200 hearings. Now it's yours. Wear it not to look serious, but to remember that every decision has weight, and that looking someone in the eye can be more important than reading their file." The following Sunday, Miles went to the old courtroom where Walter once presided. The building now hosted community events. A legal NGO was holding an orientation drive for youth in vulnerable situations. Miles asked to speak. He wore the blazer. "I'm not a lawyer, yet, but I know the streets, and I know the system. I'm here to listen, and if I can, to help." The NGO coordinator invited him to join a mentorship program. In the following months, Miles mentored 10 teens, all at risk, none with family. One of them, Toby, was just like Miles, skinny, quiet, guarded. One day, out of nowhere, he asked, "Do you think people can really change?" Miles smiled. "I didn't, until I met someone who didn't give up on me, even when I'd already given up on everything." That same month, Margot brought Miles one last surprise. Walter's will had been finalized. In addition to the house, the judge had left him a savings account, a lifetime membership to the Chicago Public Library, and a handwritten request: "Start a foundation, in my name and yours, for invisible boys like you once were. Let it grow like you did here." Roughly, but truthfully. The Green and Rowan Foundation was inaugurated 1 year later. Miles gave a speech at the ceremony. Journalists, teachers, former judges, all were there. "I didn't come from private schools or good families," he said, "but I know what it's like to look at someone and see hope. This is for everyone who was forgotten, and for those who still believe." The event was televised. 2 days later, Miles received an email. A lawyer from Alabama, who had seen the story, reached out. "Your father, Tyler, was my friend. I tried to help at the time, but was silenced. If you'd like, I can tell you everything I know." Miles arranged a video call. The man was old but sharp. He told how Tyler got caught in a fight he didn't start, how he was blamed for carrying an item that wasn't his, and how Walter, on a bad day, struck the gavel without a second thought. "Tyler didn't deserve that," the man said, "but I'm at peace knowing his son became the man you are." After the call, Miles walked to the cemetery. He brought 2 flowers, one for Walter, one for his father. He placed them on the same soil. You crossed paths in the most twisted way possible, but in the end, one changed the other's fate. He stayed there for hours. Time passed. Miles graduated, won scholarships, awards, and declined offers from big firms. He chose to stay in Chicago, in the Blue House. The foundation grew, now with 3 locations, a library, and a small conflict mediation room. No robe, no gavel, just people talking to people. On the wall of the main room, 2 photos side by side, Walter Green, Tyler Rowan. Below, the inscription reads, "Justice exists only when we listen before we judge, and love before we give up." One morning, already an adult, Miles visited a public school in the city's south side to give a talk. At the end, a girl approached him, clutching a notebook to her chest. "Did you ever live on the street?" "I did." "And you still became a lawyer?" "I did." "And can you trust adults?" Miles smiled, knelt in front of her. "Some, yes. And if you don't find one, be the adult others can trust." She smiled and ran back to her classmates. On the way out of the school, Miles looked at the sky. The same sky from the day he met Walter. The slow clouds, the city smell, the familiar sounds. But everything was different. In the blazer's inner pocket, he still carried Walter's letter. Crumpled, worn, but intact. A reminder that no one is born lost. And that a gesture, a single gesture, can change entire destinies. Across the street, a street boy was wiping a car windshield at a red light. When the window rolled down, Miles smiled. "Want a sandwich?" The boy hesitated, then nodded. "Hop in," Miles said. "This house isn't just mine. It's for anyone who needs it." And so, with no promises, but with conviction, the story began again and again. Because some homes aren't made of walls. They're made of people. People who choose not to look away. People who see. If you enjoyed this story, click the next video on your screen to hear another moving tale. See you there.